Tube Buddies podcast featuring our discussion of the Netflix original movie, Tallulah. As always, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit. We'd love to field any questions, comments, and concerns, and please rate us on iTunes. It's the number one way that you can support our show, and we'd really appreciate it. I'm Adam Foxman, and I'm joined by my wife, Bethany, for the first time. How you doing, Bethany?
Hi. Thank you so much for letting me play. I've been super excited about this all day, and really nervous, so I'm glad I had that beer beforehand, and I will try not to mouth this burp into the speaker.
Judging by the notes that you took, it would definitely seem as though you were the one who had been doing podcasts for the last few weeks, because my notes compared to yours were pretty weak.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. First off, this movie stars Ellen Page, and the writer-director on your notes, it shows, is somebody from Orange is the New Black?
Yeah, she's the, I just read a little synopsis. I didn't actually go and see if this is true, but it said she's the director-writer for Orange is the New Black, and I'm going to butcher his name. Cian Heder?
Nailed it.
Anyway, it becomes obvious because there's a ton of really sweet cameos from Orange is the New Black, which every time they came on I went, ooh, and wrote it down in my notes.
Yeah, there were a lot of good ones. So the movie starts off with Ellen Page running out of a bar. Her boyfriend's in the truck. She's being chased out by people, and she's stolen a bottle of liquor. So they get in the van, they ride off really quick. People are chasing them, throwing stuff, and this is where you start getting the early sense that these two are not necessarily living above board.
Yes, and she seems really pleased with how it all went down. The guy who you assume is her boyfriend, he seems a little irritated with her shenanigans.
Because she didn't actually have money to bet, if I remember correctly.
Yes, something about betting. She didn't have money to bet, but she's like, but I got this, and had a bottle of some sort of brown liquor, and was he smoking a marijuana cigarette?
Yeah, it looked like it. Some reefer madness type stuff.
Yes.
The next scene here that follows up in the van, I'm going to let you go into, because I feel like I could probably get myself into trouble, so I'll let you take the lead on this one.
No. I know there was an exchange of conversation, but really all I remember is Ellen Page and whoever that guy is, her boyfriend, boning in the van. And I wrote, "Nice tits, Juno."
Yeah, see, you wrote "Nice tits, Juno," and I was scared that you were going to read my notes, so mine literally just says "sex scene, Ellen Page topless."
I was shocked. I don't know. So I definitely was surprised by what she had upstairs. Although once the scene was going on and she was, the character was clearly enjoying herself, for me it was really weird to watch Ellen Page bone. I don't know. I was uncomfortable with it. She would not be on my top 10 of actresses that I would want to see bone.
It is strange, especially because she does seem kind of perpetually like the teenager playing the roles, even though she's probably closer to our age.
Yeah, she seems a little asexual to me. I know she's actually homosexual, but I don't know. I didn't love that, but that's fine.
All right, so the scene following that, we get a little bit more clued into what their lifestyle is, which it seems is definitely a grifter gypsy style where they live out of their van and travel around the country, stealing and doing whatever they can to kind of get by, and then living out of their van, which you wrote down was super cluttered, and it was. It did not look like a place where you could really spread out.
No, it was grimy, and there were blankets or tapestries everywhere, and it looked nasty. But you get the impression when they're talking that she loves that lifestyle, Tallulah or Lou. And
he's totally done with the vagabond lifestyle.
Yes. So they start talking, and this is post-coitus. Is that how you put it?
Yep, post-coitus. Nailed it. Yep.
And I wrote Wanderlust because she's talking about all these places she'd like to go. In particular, she really wants to see India, and she's waxing on and on about how dreamy that sounds. And the boyfriend's smiling, but he says he does not want to go to India. He basically describes them settling down, going back to the city, which you sort of assume that's where they're from, getting jobs, maybe getting married, and you can tell that that's not her jam. Like, I wrote down, he wants picket fence with 2.5 kids, and she wants to be a dirty hippie. Like, they are on completely different pages.
That's basically it. And she tells him that he can fucking kick rocks if he's not with it. And they kind of go to bed, it seems like. And
he's like, I said I love you.
Yeah, they go to bed definitely a little bit upset with each other, it seems like. And then in the middle of the night, she's having some sort of dream sequence, which you don't know is a dream sequence at first until she literally starts floating off. And unless this movie was going to go in a complete right-hand turn and become a sci-fi film, you realize pretty quickly that it is a dream sequence.
Yeah, it's like her trying to get back in the van. She sees in the van, she knocks, she pulls on the handle, and then you see her feet, her legs start floating, and then she wakes up in the van.
And there's a callback to it later, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the next morning, she gets up, and he is gone, and she's screaming, you don't leave without saying goodbye. And so then from that point, it's time to figure out what plan B is going to be.
She finds, they clearly have been stealing credit cards or hoarding credit cards, whatever, but she finds one that says Margaret Mooney on it, and she sort of has this revelation, drives into the city. She's smiling, she seems happy, and then basically you see her pull up. It's in a nice neighborhood. She pulls up next to, I guess, an apartment building, I don't know, condo, whatever. I thought this was so funny. You see the front of her van, and it says Dodge, and then there's a little ram, like a kid's toy ram that's been duct taped right under the word Dodge.
Did not catch that.
Oh my gosh, that made me laugh. So just showing you the stark difference between this Upper East Side neighborhood in New York and then her really shitty van.
Yeah, the van definitely sticks out like a sore thumb, but she ends up going inside, and there is a doorman in there who doesn't seem keen about letting her by at first, but she says that she knows Margaret Mooney, and she's in, and then she lists off the wrong apartment number because she's just guessing. And then when the guy goes to deal with the delivery man, she really quick sneaks into the elevator and heads up to Margaret's apartment.
So then you see her knock on the door. This woman, you don't know her name yet, but she opens the door, and Lou starts to tell her story, and then you realize that, okay, this is her boyfriend's mom. Her boyfriend's name is Nico, and I think this might be the first time they say that.
I hadn't caught it till this point. In fact, like you said, I had no idea that she was heading to his mom's house until this point right here.
Yes, so you don't really know where she's going, but you figure it out by what she's telling this woman. This woman is upset. How did she get... or Margaret is upset. How did this girl who looks homeless get up here? She quickly surmises that Ellen, or keep wanting to call her Ellen, but Lou wants money. She says that, what did
you
she
keep
say?
wanting to call her Ellen. By the way, I had to go back and change my notes from Juno like a half a dozen times, because as I'm taking notes during the movie, you don't really have time to stop and think about it, so I just kept writing Juno and then had to do a search and replace at the end of the movie.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I wasn't getting a Juno vibe from her until I saw her and Allison Janney together, and they're so awesome together. They're both really great actresses. Well, Allison Janney's a really great actress, but as soon as they were together...
I think Ellen Page is a good actress. I just think that she's a little bit more understated. She doesn't emote quite the same way that Allison does, but...
I think she's sometimes a little one note, maybe, for me. I just always associate her as, oh, there's Juno, because she always sort of...
Yeah, but I don't know. To me, a good actor doesn't necessarily have to be versatile. I mean, obviously that's the sign of a greater actor, but if somebody can play that one note really well and they're cast into that role, that doesn't bother me at all. Like, George Clooney to me has almost no range, but I still consider him to be a fantastic actor.
Meh. But anyway, you see them together, and I, for me, instantly smiled, because I think that they have just awesome chemistry together on screen.
And essentially what she's there for, once she finds out that he's not there, is just to try and get money out of her, which the mom recognizes pretty quickly is the game here, and she slams the door in her face. And so then Lou goes downstairs and walks out, is basically about to be harried by the security guy, but she kind of just blows him off and walks outside really quickly.
Then you see Nico's mom, who we find out is Margaret, so I'm just going to refer to her as Margaret. She seems worn out, sad. Her apartment looks bland. You can tell she lives alone with this turtle in a dingy brown tank. It's sad. She goes downstairs and immediately yells at the doorman for letting Lou get up to her apartment. So she's being really nasty. I wrote, seems mean, rude bitch. And then there's a mention of papers that have been delivered to her. And I immediately got the impression that they were divorce papers. Whenever anyone says papers, I think divorce papers. So she sort of gets defensive about that. But after the mention of the papers, does say if that girl comes back to let Margaret know that she wants to speak with her again.
So after Lou has left here, she ends up going to a hotel and is just kind of wandering around, and you see her eating scraps of food off of people's plates that they've left in the hallway for room service to pick up. And then out of nowhere, this lady opens the door and she is really just clearly drunk right out of the gates. And I'm sure you have something to say about her wardrobe choice.
Oh my gosh, so she's in her Spanx, her bra is hanging out, her hair is in curlers, she's oh my god, dude, she's instant train wreck. Like, you see her and you know what kind of a woman this is. Just, oh god, such a mess.
Well, and the visual is just continuously supported by her actions, especially throughout this scene, but honestly throughout the whole movie. She's clearly a loose cannon and is having a midlife crisis on top of probably already being relatively unstable.
Yes, so she immediately invites Lou in, assumes she's wait staff, and just jumps into Lou watching her baby. And then you see this adorable baby, maybe 1.5, this cute little baby tush, naked, walking around this woman's hotel room, which is just cluttered and nasty with alcohol bottles and whatever else. And Lou is sort of like, taken aback, but she's instantly saying things, look, you have a natural connection with her and I need you to watch her. I'm meeting a man and I shouldn't be meeting him, and telling her all these personal details. A guy comes to the door who does work for the hotel. She opens it. It's one of those champagne, what are those called?
Flutes?
Bucket. It's basically a bucket of
right.
beer. She's in her Spanx. She takes the bucket and kisses him on the mouth. So
yeah, not on the cheek or anything like that. Straight on the mouth. The guy looks very uncomfortable. And by the way, I was feeling uncomfortable during this scene. To clue the listeners in, we have young children. So watching the negligence with this baby, it's just this growing sense of discomfort. Actually, for me, throughout the entire movie,
yes,
it actually became a little difficult to shake and just sit back and enjoy the film at some points, because I just felt uncomfortable. Every time the baby cried, I was like grabbing the remote to turn the volume down. I felt very tense the entire time, and it really all starts in this scene.
I totally felt the same way. There's just this instant hatred as a mother of a young child towards this woman who, at least on the surface, is a terrible mother.
So this lady is, she mentioned something about her husband doesn't know that she's here, and she's actually meeting some gentleman caller, and they're going to go out and, I mean, she says some relatively graphic things about how, like, just this guy looking at her gets her wet, and...
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, it just struck me as, like, a relatively awkward thing to say to a stranger, especially when you're sitting in front of your baby as well.
Sure. I remember her talking about, I think because I relate, how kids have ruined her body. So I was certainly thinking, okay, maybe me and the psycho bitch have something in common. Plus, when she was in the Spanx drinking beer, I definitely laughed out loud, knowing that the majority of the days I'm in my underwear drinking beer.
That's basically you recording this podcast right now. So the next scene after this lady does leave, it leaves a complete fucking stranger with her toddler.
She offered her $100, right? She gave her $100, and then that sort of swayed Lou into. Plus, she was suggesting things like take her swimming and it's winter time, or maybe a beer would calm the baby down. Just outrageous things.
Yeah, so the next scene is her with the baby, and they're taking a bath together. So a complete stranger taking a bath with the baby. Again, making me feel super uncomfortable. But they end up, kind of bonding a little bit, and they're playing, and eventually the mom comes in completely wasted. I guess the guy spurned her advances, and she just passes out on the bed.
Yes, and before that, you can tell that Lou is forming some sort of connection or bond with the baby. She's just the bath, but also playing with her, cuddling with her. So I think that she's already started to feel some sort of due that she needs to care for her.
Well, and she can't figure out what to do. There's not like a pack and play or anything like that set up that we can see. So essentially at this point, it's like, do I leave the baby completely unattended with this woman who's passed out and just let the baby wander around to get itself hurt? And or maybe she didn't even think about it even that much, because she kind of just grabs the baby and runs out after a moment of reflecting. I think when she first sets the baby down, it starts crying. Yes. I don't know, it cried a lot throughout the movie.
Yeah, this scene was really hard. You can see her on the verge. Should she stay or should she go? A little Stranger Than Fiction nod.
Stranger Things.
Why do I keep saying Stranger Things? Excuse me. Anyway, so the music gets a little intense.
Also, can I just say, like, a normal person would have just called CPS, or maybe at minimum just told the hotel staff, like, listen, this woman's passed out upstairs. She seems very unstable. The baby has nothing to enclose it. No crib, no pack and play. I don't know what to do. I feel uncomfortable leaving, but I also am not going to... Just to say, like, a stable... there were so many better ways that this could have been handled. Of course, we wouldn't have a movie if that had been the case. So
what a boring movie.
Yeah, but anyway, so she does end up leaving, gets in the van with the baby, and cuddles her.
This was really... as a mom, I was crying watching this. The baby's sobbing... And I get that, you won't understand this, but that feeling when a mom hears a baby crying and it's like your boobs instantly fill with milk, like this breast milk feeling.
No, I get that. I have that same sensation.
So I felt that sort of like, oh my God, I want to take care of her with my breast milk. No.
Moving on. So the next scene is Margaret, going to a book signing, and it's her book signing. She's an author of some sort, and she walks past this couple, and it's pretty evident that they were basically friends of her and her estranged husband, and that they kind of chose him in the split up. And now, and she's not particularly kind to them either. She kind of tells it to them straight about how they kind of just fucking ditched her. Yeah,
she does. She leaves and they look uncomfortable, and then the wife says she's lost a lot of weight, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
Typical female reaction to seeing another woman. But she goes to her book signing, right?
Yeah, and so is her book actually like a marriage counseling type book?
I didn't get the feeling it was a marriage counseling book. It seemed like a dissection of marriage to me. It sounded a little more clinical. I don't know. It definitely didn't sound interesting to me.
Yeah, me neither. I literally wrote down 0 notes about that entire scene. So,
well, it just illustrated further how lonely and sad her life is. She's writing books about marriage while hers is clearly on the rocks.
So then after that, we get another shot of Lou, who is getting some supplies for this baby.
Yes, and she is clueless. She asks another woman with a baby who's a similar size, how much does she weigh, trying to gauge what kind of diapers she has. The woman is very rude, but she ends up buying some diapers and then stealing this woman's stroller. And then I did want to say, Margot, you do see a scene with her. She's in the tub. I think it's after her book signing. She's got the divorce papers like she's ready to sign, and then she just pushes them underwater, and she's got kind of a little smile on her face, like a fuck you to the husband.
Followed by instant regret, right. And they're draped all over the bathroom. She's in like a bathrobe or something, and she's got the blow dry, the hair dryer going all over them. That was a funny scene. The next scene you get with Margot was really sad because it seems like the only companion she has in this house, which is sad in and of itself, is a little pet turtle who you see her tending to earlier in a couple of scenes ago. And she goes in and realizes the turtle's dead. And she really is a good actress because I don't think I've ever teared up over a dead turtle before. I mean, I don't think I would in actuality either. And seeing it here in the movie, the way she sold it, it was really good.
At this point, I didn't know if I liked the movie. You and I haven't discussed whether we liked it or not. We sort of we said we wouldn't talk about it at all. But at this point, I wrote, so far, this movie is a real downer.
I was not enjoying it at all in the beginning, to be honest. Towards the end of it, definitely turned around a little bit, and we'll talk about it as we go, but through this point in the movie, I was not enjoying it. And so the next scene that we get is the scene where Lou actually shows back up at Margot's apartment and kind of spins her this whole yarn about how she is actually the grandmother of this child and basically doing what she can to get into the apartment.
Yes, so she tells Margaret that they've named the baby Margaret after her.
Which she says she hates that name, and that's why she goes by Margot.
And Lou goes, well, we call her Maggie? We call her Maggie. But she doesn't really have any firm answers. Well, how old is she? She's kind of trying to divert attention. But basically, Margot gives her one night. Says, you have one night. Don't you dare steal anything. Very begrudgingly lets this happen. You can tell she's not really buying the story, but she's given her one night.
Yeah, and so while this is happening, the crazy woman ends up waking up, opening up the shades, and then accidentally stumbles over a child's toy, realizes, where the fuck's the baby? Goes running out into the hallway, still half undressed, and ends up kind of dressing as... But going and running and basically calling the police.
So, Psycho Bitch is how I refer to her in my notes. Psycho Bitch, she's in the hotel room, and she's with the cops now. Clearly she's contacted authorities, and you see... Angel Baptista?
Batista from Dexter.
Yeah, Dexter cop, who I love, but I feel like he only ever plays a cop.
Yeah, basically. I will say in the show Gotham, which is not the best show, I will just throw that out there, but it's a guilty pleasure. He does play a gangster in that. So I guess one extreme of the law or the other.
I would like it if they had his name just remain Angel in any role he played when he was a cop.
Yeah.
Angel Baptista. But anyway, he's trying to get the story from her, and it becomes clear to everyone involved in this that she's crazy. She's much more concerned about, don't contact my husband. She says really offensive things like, the baby's pretty, she's white, what if somebody stole her? And just really uncaring things, like she doesn't really... It's about how it reflects on her.
Basically, yes. And we see more things along those lines as it moves forward about how she doesn't want them to leak anything out to the media because it would be so embarrassing. And obviously part of that is the fact that her husband has no idea that this is where she is.
So the next scene is Lou, and she's in bed with the baby, whose name actually is Madison, but I don't even know if she ever refers to her as Madison or Maggie ever, so... But anyway, she's in bed with the baby at Margot's house, and she's sort of admiring her, the baby sleeping, and Margot comes in, and Lou describes how isn't the baby just the coolest, weirdest thing, which that made my eyes water, because I remember thinking that about our kids too, like, oh, they're so cool, and it's so weird.
See, I felt a little disengaged from any emotional reaction she was having to the baby at this point, because I just kept thinking, like, so this is the protagonist that I'm supposed to be rooting for who has stolen a baby.
Yeah.
So for me, that was like this undertone to the whole thing that kind of offset a lot of like the natural emotional reactions that I would have had.
I just hate the mom so much that I'm so happy the baby is anywhere else, even though the baby's now with a homeless girl who lives out of her van.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's any better, but...
I think, though, that this is probably... Margot walks in, and Lou says this to Margot, and I think that this is probably one of the first moments where Margot begins to melt a little bit. She's maybe seeing some good to Lou. She's beginning to warm a little bit. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah, and then there's a couple other little parts here. Nothing that really needs too much mentioning. I mean, Margot realizes that Lou has no toys, no clothes, nothing like that. She even makes up some little lie about how the stuff was all stolen. But there's not really, I guess, too much else to this scene. Am I right?
No, and then even the next scene in the morning, Margot is exasperated that Lou just doesn't have food. What do you normally feed the baby? Where are her clothes? Somebody stole them. It just you can tell she's just shocked that...
This is the scene with the juicer, right? Where she's making the homemade lemonade?
Oh, yes. She wakes up to the sound of Lou juicing lemons, which is the worst sound in the world, a juicer sound.
I don't know. I was listening to a baby cry throughout the entire movie, so I actually feel differently about that.
I hate that juicer.
Yeah, but so she goes out and sells lemonade outside in a van.
Yeah, she has this really stupid idea that that's how she's going to make money. She as much street smarts as she may have, there's like no common sense. She lives in this sort of fantasy idea. Like, she rescues the baby, but she doesn't really think about what's going to happen. She's going to sell lemonade, and that's how she's going to afford to take care of the baby. It's just not reality based at all.
She wants like the freedom of adulthood with the responsibilities of childhood.
Yes, and Margot's like, she's looking at her like she's an idiot. You're gonna sell lemonade. I don't actually think she takes her seriously. But then you see her in her van. You know what? You want lemonade? You want lemonade? And I don't know if you caught this, but the girl that buys lemonade is a character from Orange is the New Black.
Which?
Okay, so this isn't going to be super helpful. She's gay, but she's got short hair and frosted tips. She wasn't a main character, but she was sort of. If you saw her, you would recognize her. I don't even know if she had a name.
I did see her, and I didn't recognize her, so I don't know if that holds up.
If you rewatched Orange is the New Black and you saw her, you'd say, "Oh, her."
Okay.
Random gay background jail chick.
Okay. Well, I didn't. I did not recognize her either way.
Well, that was clearly a very important part of the movie.
I noticed that. You capitalized it, and there are multiple explanation points.
It's in red.
She does end up giving a free lemonade to the doorman because when Margot comes downstairs, she is humiliated that she's out there selling lemonade out of her van outside of the building.
Somehow, Lou gets one more night at Margot's, though. I don't know if there's a scene before
No,
this.
it's unspoken. Okay. It just happens.
So she's in bed again with the baby, and you can sort of see her coming to the realization that she's got to think about the future. She's stolen a baby. So she's conflicted, and you see her get up out of bed. She makes a lot of split decisions, I feel like. She rummages through Margot's purse, steals some money, gets in the van, and she looks devastated. She starts it up, and then this is where I wasn't sure. Does she actually start the van up and turn it off?
Yes.
Or does the van... Okay.
Yeah, the van did start, because my natural thought there was the van's not going to start.
Yes, me too.
I would almost never in any other situation notice such a trivial detail, but my mind was already hinging on like what I thought was going to happen, which is she was going to turn it on and was going to do that terrible sound effect.
This lets you know she's a good person, I feel like. Had the van not started, it would have made her seem
good person might be stretching the definition right there. But she definitely has some semblance of a conscience. Right. So she does end up passing out in the back of the van and is woken up by thunderous knocking outside, which is from Margot, who, asks her what she's doing.
Yeah, so she kind of confronts her if she was about to leave, and her voice is raising, and she did chastise her for not knowing anything. How did the baby make it this long? And it's sort of escalating, and Lou shouts at her, "I never had anyone to ask." And that sort of stops Margot, and I think Margot feels some sympathy towards her.
Well, they end up bonding, actually. Sure. They end up going to the park together after this, and then they have a discussion about gravity and...
which turns out to be important.
Kind of, yeah. I guess that is some, central thing going on behind all of this. We
immediately think of that dream she had where she was floating off of the van, and they're laying there next to one another, and Lou throws out that sort of idea. If talking about gravity, what if there wasn't gravity? What would you do? And Lou says that she would grab something and hold on so she didn't just float away, grab a tree branch or whatever.
Which it kind of seems like that is what she's doing as a metaphor. That's what she's doing with the baby, with the boyfriend, here with Margot. Like, she's always in danger of floating off into fairyland and is grabbing onto something else to keep her grounded. And
she has said how you can't trust anyone, you can't rely on anyone, but you see her trying to make those connections. She wants to be grounded. She wants something to hold her down. So that was her sentiment. And then Margot sort of smiles and says that she wouldn't hold on to anything. She would just let herself float away.
But then Margot does tell this story about how when she was younger, how she did, she wanted those stereotypical sort of things of being a mother and being a wife, and that clearly is not something at this point that Lou has experienced. Although maybe she's feeling some, twinge of that with the baby now.
Yeah, I think so. But I think Lou, whenever she feels...
Do you? Because there is a lot of conflicting parts to that.
I feel like Lou then gets after her and says, well, that's your problem. You put your happiness in someone else's hands. And you get more of that. She's definitely been... something bad has happened. People have let her down. She doesn't put her trust in anyone else, and I think that she probably does feel threatened about her feelings for the baby and her feelings for Margot, and sort of lashes out, sort of like she did with the boyfriend, when he said, "I love you," and she basically said, "Fuck you." Yeah,
that's true. The next scene is the psycho drunk bitch, as you so fondly like to call her. Psycho bitch. She's with the cops in the hotel room, and this is where we get our next little... It's not even really a cameo, because she actually does play a decent bit part in this.
Crazy Eyes,
yeah. And she was pretty good, and very tame.
Yes. Very pregnant, very tame. Mm-hmm. And she is from CPS, or Child Protective Services. And I love it because everyone's sort of been tiptoeing around this woman's feelings, sort of treating her very gingerly, including Angel Batista. Mm-hmm. And Crazy Eyes doesn't. I mean, she starts out very professional, but then basically calls her out for being a bad mom. Like, references all the empty liquor bottles everywhere, and...
Well, and it wasn't like it was unprompted either. I mean, she's doing it in response to the crazy woman is being a fucking bitch to her, and so she basically ends up saying something along the lines of, most of the people that I end up running into are poor or they're addicts, and not that that's an excuse, but at least it's something that I can understand. But with you, basically trying to say, like, you have all the advantages anybody could ever want in this lifetime, and you're squandering them and are still a worthless parent, which is goddamn true at this point, we know.
And she does not like that.
But the next scene I really actually did like. It was
cute.
To me, is actually some of these moments in between, I wanted to say Juno, in between Margot and Lou. There were the scenes that started kind of warming me up to the movie a little bit. And this scene with Margot and the doorman was... Manuel, that's his name? Manuel. Was definitely one of my, like, actually just their interactions in general were some of my favorite parts in the movie.
Oh, sweet. He sort of flirts with her, gives her some sort of compliment. Whatever. He compliments her, and she's a little taken aback. You can tell she's embarrassed, but definitely flattered. She responds really awkwardly. And what does she do? Get on the elevator and go back upstairs or something?
Yeah, she does. Now, what do you think about this? Don't you think he's being a little opportunistic since he knows what her whole situation is, flirting with her the way that it is? Or do you think that that's just a fine, natural thing to do?
Honestly, I didn't get that vibe. I got the vibe that he was sort of pitying her and throwing out,
see, I didn't get that. Okay, well, that's fine. Either way, I like his character. I'm really just picking at nits right here. I thought that he was fine, but
especially after she tore him a new one in the beginning and was really nasty to him.
All right, so do you remember what happened when they go back into the apartment right here? This was a pretty good scene.
Yes.
This is the part with the paintings.
Oh, yes. I thought you were talking about the scene with her and Manuel, but that comes later.
No. Yeah. This is where she goes upstairs, and Lou has taken down all the paintings, which she had complained about in an earlier scene about how everything in the house is her husband. She hates all the stuff, but she can't take it down because it's like professor housing sort of stuff, so she would have to get vacated if it were to come to light.
That they weren't living there together.
Exactly. So she ends up, Lou ends up taking down all the paintings and putting them down on the floor. She does cover the rug with, some newspapers or something.
She does, but she moves all the nice furniture and she crumples up the rug. And again, in her fantastical way of thinking, she's taken all these paintings down. Yes. Mm-hmm. She's got newspaper laid out and paint brushes, and she looks proud of herself. Like she's got a good idea. And that Margot's going to really appreciate
She doesn't really back off of that, even when faced by the reaction from Margot, which is fucking horror that all of her nice things, apparently vintage antique stuff, is all scattered around the room, and she accidentally knocks over a bucket of paint onto the painting. But actually, no, before that, she actually kicks Lou out. She says, "You leave. You have to go." And during that little diatribe she's giving, that's when she knocks over the paint, and she's trying to clean it off of the painting, and then quickly realizes it's fucking ruined.
And before that, she had called Lou a feral beast.
A feral beast,
and
yeah.
Lou never gets angry. She just sort of responds as if it's a normal conversation. And then she does say, "No wonder Nico left," and that kind of broke my heart. She says that to Margot, and then that's when Margot's like, "Get out."
Yeah.
But then she spills the yellow paint.
And then she puts her hand in the paint to try to clean it off, and then she realizes it's not working, so she starts basically finger painting on it. And then it basically immediately cuts to them with 2 wine glasses that are covered in paint. And they're sitting there drinking, talking about, what could have been in life and, what has transpired. Margot had actually been on a trip to India, but tells Lou, about, it's gross, dead cows floating in the river that people are drinking out of.
I thought it was cute, too, when she finally does surrender to the idea of painting over his old paintings. And Lou says, "See, now it's yours." So they did paint over the stuff. But something that I think is far more important than any of that is happening in the background of this scene, which is on the TV. There is a news segment going, and it's actually about the child that's missing. Now, do they have the picture of her in the elevator at this point? I think so. It's a picture of...
It's being broadcast everywhere now, too.
It was when she first took the baby, she turned around and looked in the elevator camera, and that's what's posted right there on the TV from the news stations.
Definitely.
And you can see sheer panic on her face. And
she
does not
realized,
want Margot to see.
this is real now to her because she's been kind of existing in this little box and now she's seeing like that the outside world continued moving while she was in here, and it's not pretty. It's not looking good for her.
Consequences, man.
Yeah, and so speaking of which, they do cut back now to the psycho woman whose husband has been called, and the husband is fucking pissed.
And again, she's more concerned about herself, just like she didn't even want the husband to be notified that the child went missing.
Yeah.
So she seems just shocked and awed that they would dare call the husband. And the husband's not supposed to know she's there, and just very, again, only concerned about herself. And again, Crazy Eyes really lays into her, and the psycho woman says something about getting her fired. And I love that Crazy Eyes is like, you're not the first shitty mom to try and get me fired.
Yeah, that was good. I really like that. She handed it to her. You want more people to throughout the movie too, because she's fucking awful. I mean, part of you feels for her, except for she's not grieving the situation for the right reasons.
At this point, I haven't felt anything for her except hatred. I mean, nothing. But so she storms out of the hotel room, and they're kind of telling her, no, you need to stay, you need to help us find your daughter. But her pride has been wounded, her feelings are hurt, and she would rather not help and tend to herself, get another hotel room, than deal with the scorn that she so rightly deserves.
Yeah, ugh. But the next little scene that we get is a flashback of when Nico and Lou first met, and this is them on the dock, right?
No, this is in the park, and it's...
That's right. He comes up on his bike that had the wheels stolen.
And you don't actually know it's a flashback at first, because it shows her and the baby at the park. The baby's kind of on the ground playing, and then she looks up, and you see... I didn't know it was Nico at first, but you see this guy coming over. He's holding a bike without wheels.
Wow, he looks a lot like Nico, but it didn't make sense to me until they cut back and the baby's not there and you realize it's a flashback.
I did that too. I was thinking, why would they cast somebody that looks just like their boyfriend?
It actually was decent the way that it was set up, but it certainly made me question what the fuck was happening. But the important thing here that you learn that is a vehicle for moving the plot along is that the reason that Margot's husband left is because he was a closeted homosexual and he found a lover, I guess? Or do we not know the whole lover part?
I don't think you know the whole lover part. Basically, they're sort of... They joke about the bike, and then they start doing that get-to-know-you kind of talk, and he says how he wants to leave. His mom's crazy, his dad's gay, and she says something about her lifestyle and asks if he's gay, and he says no, and she said, let's keep it that way. And then, I mean, I guess then they're boyfriend and girlfriend. That's how it works.
That's basically it. Now we get to the other scene that has Manuel, and she invites him up, Margot that is, invites him up for wine.
After she's put on her little heels.
She was all dolled up. She was looking cute. She definitely prepped for this moment, it felt like. And so he calls a replacement for his shift so he can go on a break or something. And they go upstairs, and
it's all super awkward. You can tell she's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's been a while since she's probably been in the seductress role. And so she's like asking him about, she's telling him about this wine and that wine. Like this is from the, this vineyard and and he's like I'm more of a beer guy. Yeah. And so he realizes like that she is struggling to kind of get to the moment. So he grabs her arm, spins her around, romantic gesture, goes in for the kiss, and she recoils from him, basically.
So this is what I was thinking when this was happening. When he grabs her and kisses her really passionately, and she pushes him away, and he looks a little surprised. I was thinking, I wonder if other women ask him to come up to the room for sex, and maybe he thought that's what she was doing, like...
I didn't even think about the other woman part. I thought it was so very clear what she was doing and thought the same thing that he did during that moment.
I was thinking maybe he didn't know she was being genuine. She just wanted to bone. And maybe other old ladies do that. Old single ladies invite Manuel up to their room to have
Even
sex
if they
with them.
don't, I think that seemed pretty clear that was her intention. And then it seemed like she chickened out, basically.
Oh, you think she wanted to have sex? I just think she wanted to have some company.
To me, it seemed like she wanted some physical boogie get down.
I think she just wanted conversation. Yeah. Maybe a smooch.
That is not what I got out of the scene at all.
All right. Well, I'm the woman, but all right. Well, we'll go with that.
All right. Well, I obviously saw it as Manuel did.
I saw it like I see all men, that he was clearly a prostitute.
Prostitute? What? She's the one who's inviting strange men up to her room and trying to get them drunk and dressing up all flashy.
What are men good for if not just using them for their bodies and setting them back to open the door for other people?
Sure, fine. That's what I thought she was doing here. But so the next scene I fucking hated.
Oh my god.
Maybe my least favorite scene of the entire movie.
It makes me angry because then it makes me have to work.
Yeah. So, Lou thinks she's looking at the baby. The baby's just laid down, and she, instead of checking to see really if it's breathing or anything, she just kind of assumes that it's dead. Maybe sleeping, but dead probably is what she thinks. So she goes in and wakes up poor fucking Margot with this news, and Margot goes running in there, and of course the baby's fucking fine.
The baby is dead or asleep.
Yeah,
I can't tell.
I hated it. Honestly, yeah. I just like that. I wonder if we had a conversation between two people who were not parents right here, if their take on all this would be different. But watching it as a parent, it was just infuriating. Just the level of neglect and just, I don't know, just how shitty she is in all these scenes.
Well, right after that, when Margot comes back and is like, no, she's fine, sort of exasperated with her, Lou immediately jumps into the bed. And I wondered, when Lou first came into Margot's room, if maybe she was using maybe kind of using that as an excuse. Maybe she really knew the baby was asleep, but wanted the company of Margot, wanted to be close to Margot. Because she did seem a little panicked, but not, she immediately got into bed and was chatty Cathy with Margot.
Yeah, well, and they end up having the conversation about what happened with Manuel, and so Margot tells Lou, about the whole thing, and Lou tells her that she should have grabbed his cock.
She grabbed his cock! And Margot kind of laughs, and she's like, oh, I didn't think of that.
Stupid.
But the reason they end up talking about that is they have some sort of deep conversation about how all of us are going to die, and Margot just busts out laughing, giggling about, I don't know, just the absurdity of the conversation, and then that's when she shares the stuff about Manuel and the sound advice of grabbing his cock, which,
honestly, that's probably what Manuel was expecting at that point.
Yeah.
So the next scene is another flashback of Nico and Lou, and I guess there's nothing super important really about it, except for it shows that this is when they left. They're on this dock. He says it's his favorite place in New York because
tells her to dive in.
Like an island. Yeah, so he tells her to dive in.
Says he's ready to go with her. She's ready to leave. He wants to go with her. She says sort of like, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. He says, no, I'm going with you. And she sort of says, well, don't you have to say goodbye? You say goodbye to your mom. And he says, fuck that. And then you hear police sirens in the background, and he sort of makes a joke like, they're coming for you. And this, to me, immediately harkens back to the scene when, in the very beginning, when the boyfriend has left her in the van and she shouts like, you're supposed to say goodbye. So you sort of see that, that's where that came from.
Oh, okay. Also did not catch that, although that is pretty on the nose, I guess, if that's basically what happened right there when she says you have to say goodbye.
You proud of me?
Yeah. Nicely done. But anyway, not too much else there, just giving a little bit of backdrop. But the next scene is where Nico's dad finally meets Lou for the first time. And he is with his husband or boyfriend, who is played by Zachary Quinto. Yes. And I thought that it was acted out pretty well. I actually really like both those actors. I think the father is the guy who played on, was it The C Word?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he played the brother.
Homeless brother.
Yes, he looked quite different in this, whereas in that one he was supposed to look like almost homeless. In this one he looked pretty refined.
Yeah, and leading up to the dinner, he said he wanted to meet this woman and he wanted to meet his potential grandchild, and Margot really didn't want to go. She did not want to see him happy, and she said she doesn't want to see him happy or gay, which is funny. And it's so awkward. You can tell she's miserable. There's some weird penis carving on the dinner table that was super distracting to me.
They're talking about maybe adopting a child, and
super callous.
Yeah, the dad, or Nico's dad, wants to keep changing the subject. Like, come on, Zachary Quinto, like, this is obviously making Margot uncomfortable. Like, let's talk about, like, more benign, neutral subjects here. Yeah. But anyway, he ends up getting really fucking pissed at Lou.
He does, and he asks if she is named after Tallulah, and it talks about some famous Tallulah, and the quote is, and he's like, oh, do you know this quote? If I had to make my mistakes over again, I would have done them sooner. And that just so pissed me off, because it's so rude. It's like he wished he would have come out gay sooner and avoided the marriage. I hated that.
Yeah, they end up having a really awful exchange. She says terrible things to him. I think she even uses the word faggot at one point.
She called him a bag of sticks.
Yeah. It's
or a loose cigarette.
It was bad on both parts right there, and I mean, you get where she's coming from, and honestly, she lays out her case pretty good about how all their friends lauded him for being, you know, so brave in doing it, but she's the one who built her life on a lie, who lived a lie that he knew was a lie, and still allowed her to basically accommodate her entire existence, or, you know, her short, precious time on this earth, to support and build all this around a man who was lying about the most essential part of their marriage, which would be attraction to each other.
And she basically says, don't call her a liar. So she comes to Lou's defense. And right before this, there's a small little scene where Crazy Psycho Lady is trying to check into another hotel, and all her cards are declined.
Yeah,
the husband has cut her off.
Yeah, it's not a super important part. We just see it's just adding an extra layer of desperation with her.
You do see during this fight that the boyfriend, the gay boyfriend, he likes like a rag magazine, and you already know that Lou knows there's a picture of her with the baby in that magazine, and you could sort of see her panic. But anyway, they abruptly leave that dinner, and they can't get a cab, so they're going to take a subway. And at that same time, Psycho Lady is getting out of a cab, turns, and on the corner sees the baby and sees Lou. And
she goes to chase after them, but the cabbie won't let her go because she's going off without paying, which, from his perspective, you get it. She's just hysterical. And so eventually she does manage to pay him, but now she's like a leg behind them. So she runs after them.
She's racing.
She actually does manage to call out and get the attention of Margot, but not because Margot is also having to rush to keep up with Lou, who is about to go onto a train that's just about to depart. And anyway, long story short, even though she does notice her, there's no real interaction here other than that Lou and Margot do get on the train with the baby, screaming, honestly at this point, poor psycho mother.
This was the first time I felt anything for her.
Yeah, definitely a sad, pitiful scene of her crying and screaming on the train platform, and but there is, at first I didn't know necessarily if Margot was going to have noticed that something had transpired right here, but immediately when they get back to the apartment, relatively pivotal scene starts to happen.
Yes, which would be weird if she didn't bring up that the screaming, crying woman was chasing them. But Margot basically says, what the hell was that about?
Yeah, like, I know that you've been hiding something this entire time, like, I've known that from the beginning, but, like, now it's time, like, lay it all out there, what is going on.
Lou stereotypically gets super defensive and it basically says that she's leaving. Margot's trying to stop her, and she says, this is your family, please don't leave. Lou makes some sort of...
You're not my fucking family.
Yeah, you're not my fucking family. The baby's coughing. You do hear the baby coughing for a moment, and Lou says, she's sick. I gotta go. Runs down to the van to get the hell out of there, and the van has those shoes on it. Boots?
Yeah,
boots. Shoes? Whatever. Yep. Stilettos. And then...
Yeah.
Then it cuts back to the Psycho, and she returns to the original hotel, and you're assuming, because she's going to tell the authorities that she saw the baby, and she walks in, and her husband's there. And he just annihilates her. He calls her worthless. He's screaming at her, and she's just sort of, she's just sitting there crying, sobbing. She said she sees the baby, but she can't give any details, which was so frustrating to me. There's like no, it's like she's in shock. That's what it seemed like. She wasn't getting any details out.
She finally does get it out, like and they believe her, and so they end up, like they're gonna dispatch people, and she gives a little bit of information, but not really a lot. But okay, and I actually didn't get the detail right on this part, or at the very least I was unclear. At some point, did they say something about how the gay couple?
Yeah, so the cop is like, "Sir, I got a tip."
Okay.
And then you know that the boyfriend was looking through his little gossip magazine and saw Lou.
Okay, gotcha. But also, and did we go over this because Margot tries to chase Lou outside and comes back in, and her son's in there?
Yeah, so Nico's in the lobby. He's come back home. Nico has no idea that any of this is going on. It just took him longer to get back because he didn't have a car. He probably had to thumb his way back. Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that.
No, actually he does say something about how he got back and then was finding it difficult to come and say something. I don't know. Either way, completely unimportant. But at this point we start to realize that, and actually maybe in the scene before, that the baby's heating up a little bit, is getting a little sick. Just one other thing to make me really fucking uncomfortable, that she's now carting around like a sick child as well, and that has a fever. So she ends up going to the dock that she and Nico had once been at, and she puts the baby on the dock and dives into the water. And I was sitting here thinking the baby's going to follow her in and drown.
Right. It's like she remembered what Nico said, where he said, "Just dive." And you see her dive while the baby's just sitting there cold on the dock coughing.
Yeah.
But it's
just a dream.
It's just a vision.
Or yeah, not a dream, but a vision.
She looks up, and then somehow Nico found her on the dock.
Yeah, but this was a special place. Like, he had told her that. But still, I mean, of all the places, either way, let's set that aside. He's
upset. He sees the baby, and he's angry. And
she says we need to get her to a hospital, like ASAP. So they end up going to the hospital, and she ends up leaving the poor little child with Nico after an argument, basically, where he's like, "Listen, you're going to jail."
But it was Nico's idea, and it was really kind of sweet, where he's like, "Look, I'll say I found her in a park. You just get out of here. Otherwise, you're going to get in trouble with the police," which I thought was kind of sweet. And also, at this point that the police department is at Margot's. They've gotten to Margot's. Margot's now aware of everything that's been going on, and
this is the scene where Margot's character, I guess I don't have to say Margot's character because Margot is the character, but Margot and Psycho Bitch Lady, which I found it a little strange throughout that for some reason she's allowed to tag along everywhere that the investigators go. Is that the way that normally works?
I don't know.
Is that not strange? Because I don't think that you just basically are attached at the hip with the investigators and you follow them to every single lead.
Well, she had her Spanx on. So she's looking pretty good.
Even if she was looking pretty good, I just don't see who she flattered her way into getting into. I don't know. That to me was a little strange. But either way, they sit down and they chat and there's a couple of memorable little moments in here.
Yeah, I hated this. It made me hate her again.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the intention, but she's sitting there.
No, because she's just so fucking vapid and just incredibly shallow.
She's sitting there. Margot's trying to kind of console her, and she sort of says that she did this to herself. She wished that somebody would take the baby. She wished that the baby would be gone. She didn't want to be a mom. She basically got pregnant to try and keep her husband. She would get mad at the baby. She said she never really had those motherly feelings. She despised the baby. And then I wrote, hate her again.
Yeah.
And Margot consoles her because she's like, am I awful or am I horrible?
We're all awful.
Right. And Margot's like, we're all awful. We're all people. Or we're all human or something.
Yeah. And let's see. What is the next scene after that?
You get back to Lou. Lou did run, but she just feels awful about everything. So she calls Margot, who at this point is her family, really, is her only lifeline.
Yeah.
And the only person that she really respects. And
the tree that she'd grab when she's floating away.
Absolutely. And she apologizes, and she says why she did it. And Margot seems to understand it and accept that. And she says, you're in a lot of trouble. And meanwhile, the cops are recording the conversation and all that. And she hangs up on Margot, and she's crying, and she runs back to the hospital.
Yep, and when she gets back to the hospital, there's really... first off, there's a nice little moment where she does grab the child, and...
who's crying in Nico's arms.
Immediately is soothed by the presence here of Lou, which was sweet. But doesn't last for very long, because down the hallway, first we see Batista, who I guess is just detective at this point. Like, we don't actually know his character name.
Yeah.
But, again, he's followed by the fucking parents, who I just think that, like, this is, to me, is just very against police protocol that they are tagging along this whole time. It's ridiculous. But, so, there's this whole altercation. They're surrounded, and they basically end up saying, like, it's over.
Hand over the baby. And Lou just calls out the mom. She's like, she doesn't even want her. And she starts telling about how awful this mom was. And the mom's sort of crying, like, please give me back my baby. And the mom says she does want the baby. And Lou hands the baby over. And the baby says, Mama.
What? I didn't catch that either.
The baby says, Mama.
To whom?
To Mama.
To the actual mama?
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of nice.
Psycho.
What I did notice was that Lou gets arrested at this point.
Yes.
And they walk her out, and on the way out, Margot kind of catches her before they put her in the car and says, I'll find a way to get you out, and then Lou apologizes to her.
She says, I know you're sorry. And then she's in the car, and she's sort of smiling, or like, whatever.
I don't even fucking know what that reaction was.
I mean, she's just accepting fate. And I don't know if you caught what he said. I didn't rewind it. But Batista, like, turns around and sort of is like, don't make kidnapping children a habit now. Like,
no, that's not what he says. Yes. It was that sentiment, but basically, like, you go around doing that all the time. It was more like that.
Oh.
It was like a sarcastic thing. It wasn't like he was trying to give her like a little weird PSA about not abducting children.
Well, when I thought he said, don't go around abducting children, I was like, oh, maybe he's gonna let her out. Because he knows how terrible this mom was. So I'm hoping, like, he's gonna let her out.
Oh my god, if that had happened, this movie would have dropped down, like, 3 points on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, that would have been so awful. But it doesn't. And actually, am I wrong in saying that this is the last scene you have with Lou?
Yeah.
So we get into the final scene.
But Lou's not in this scene.
No, she's not. We get into the final scene, which is the denouement, is the word that I always use that Mathis fucking hates. But it's basically the resolution of the movie, which is Margot walking through the park. There's some street performers and stuff, and so she lays on the grass, and
she looks happy.
She sees next to her a leaf starts floating up, and then she starts floating up.
And she lays in the same spot where her and Lou were laying
yes.
the first time, and she puts her hand out like... but go ahead, sorry.
So she is basically just floating off, like gravity has released its hold on her, and she is floating up, and she grabs onto the tree at the very end, like a nice little piece of imagery.
Because she was happy about the floating, but then suddenly she realizes, no, there's something worth
you got to be connected to the earth.
Right, so you sort of feel like, I put that she's been transformed. She's got roots and people to care about and people that rely on her. And then that's the end of the movie.
Alright, so we've recapped the entire thing now. Just let's get honest about it. What did you think about the movie?
I liked it. I did like it. It's a movie I will never watch again. You know, it's not like a feel-good Friday night family movie. It's nothing I need to see again. It's anytime there's babies, I just really...
That killed it for me. I did not enjoy the movie. For me, it would have been like maybe a 4 out of 10 because the acting was good and some of the lines were pretty good, like the dialogue. But the actual plot itself was first off a little plotting, and it was not the most gripping thing for me. But more importantly, it was trying to come to grips with the fact that you're supposed to sympathize for Lou's character, Ellen Page. and what she was doing was just so overtly wrong to me. Like, objectively, it was wrong.
It was supposed to be a dramedy, and the comedy part of it, of her fumbling with the baby, falls on deaf ears for me.
Oh my God, no.
Funny.
Are you kidding that was supposed to be a dramedy?
Yeah, that's how it was described, a dramedy.
That to me, like, there were a few funny moments, but there are a few funny moments in pure dramas too. That to me should not be categorized as a dramedy, because there was the parts that should have been funny to me were fucking harrowing and stressful.
After all that, I would have liked a cheesy happy ending, like she's released from jail and goes on to live with Allison, Janney.
That would not have fit with.
No, it would have been really stupid, but that's what I wanted at the end of all of that. Just at least give me my happy ending.
Would you recommend to somebody if they said, was it good, should I watch it? What would you say?
It depends on the person. It's probably not. It feels like it's for a small subset of people who don't have kids, people who are,
But do you feel like people that don't have kids would be as emotionally attached to some of the events occurring?
I don't know. People who really like movies like Juno might like this.
But see, Juno was funny. It was more funny. Like, to me, Juno was like 60% comedy and 40% drama, and this was like 90% drama, 10% comedy.
I think the only reason I would recommend it is because I really like the name Tallulah.
Yeah, I like the name Tallulah too. And even Margot is a pretty good name. Mm-hmm. And so is Nico.
Nico.
Yeah, I like all those, but overall, there were a lot of things to like in this, a lot of good elements. It was cleverly written in terms of dialogue. It was well acted by everybody. I mean, even the characters that I fucking hated, I thought sold those parts well. Like, the crazy drunk bitch, I mean, we've mocked her character the entire time, but the woman who played her makes you hate and pity her at the same time. Like, she certainly accomplished exactly what that character was supposed to do. So
she did.
And I personally found Ellen Page to be good in this role, as I do in most things. You're right. Ellen Page is playing a version of the same character in every movie, but to me, I thought she did a good job. Although clearly, the star, do you agree, was Margot, the actress that plays Margot?
Yes.
Yeah, she was really good.
I think I liked it. If somebody asked me, hey, what did you think about the movie Tallulah, I'd say, I liked it.
Okay, I think I'd say, meh. So,
we're using the same tone, high. Meh.
Yeah. It sounds like you're probably at, what, like a 6.5?
Yeah, maybe. When I finished it, I'm like, that was good. That was a 7. But then after talking about it, I'm like, maybe it was a 6.
Yeah, see, after I was done watching it, I was like, oh, God, that's like a 3. And then the more we talked about it, I'm like, okay, there were some parts actually in there that kept me entertained. I mean, the only point, I will say it really did improve a lot after the first, like, 20 to 30 minutes. Because 20 to 30 minutes in, I honestly thought about, just shutting it down and, like, picking a different movie to podcast about.
It was a downer.
It was. But anyway, okay, so...
best part of the movie, Ellen's tits.
I'm not even going to comment on that. I got absolutely nothing that needs to be said about that. Do you have any other last thoughts about the movie?
No, just that this was super fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and doing this. Obviously, Mathis and I are going to be doing certain TV shows, but it's fun to get on and be able to do this with you. And Mathis actually just released today, like, his little take on the... that sounds so condescending.
I almost said your little podcast. Like, thanks for letting me be on your little podcast.
Yeah. To be fair, we say little buddies and things like that. Right. So, I mean, I guess that's just kind of par for the course. But anyway, no, I'm really glad you came on. And for anybody listening, again, you can always follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit. And we'd love to field any of your questions, comments, and concerns. So please rate us on iTunes. And I guess that's about it. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you next time, little buddies.
See you next time, little buddies.